This morning we're going to start working on one of the forward panels. We've got this part of the stock pretty well shaped. I've got to sculpt out the carving that was started, and we're going to draw a carving on here and do that, but that's going to be a little bit later. But we've got all this area here all finished, the molding's on, we've got the toe plate on. So now we're going to skip up to the side panel. And the side panels will have a step cut down in them right here. Now this section right here is going to have to be lowered a bit. It should be down at the bottom of the bevel on the frizzen plate. But we don't have very much space between the face of this and where the loading stick goes down underneath. Now this is exactly what we've got here. Now this thimble is going to be cut right clean through the side panel. It looks like it's a mistake right now, but you'll see that it's going to work out. But what we do is the loading stick, when I cut this channel in here, the loading stick actually goes deeper as it goes towards the rear so that it will go underneath the side. So this groove here is 100 thousandths deeper on this end than it is at this end. Then I turn the piece over and I put the groove in from where that ended at the thimble and bring it down here. Now you see with the groove in it there and the top there, that doesn't leave very much room. And on this one here, if I measure that right now, you can see there's 130 thousandths, 125 thousandths between that groove and the top here. So we can't take much off of here. We've got to be very careful of that. And they're all a little bit different, but they're all within 10 thousandths. But that 10 thousandths can be the difference of breaking through or not breaking through. So we're going to have to be very, very careful with that. Now the thimble as cast. This is a standard thimble that you can get at Track of the Wolf or anywhere. And on a conventional rifle, you leave them square here. Some people do put a point on them. But on a lot of the Lancasters, they are square. So what I've done, basically, is just put a point on it. And the reason for that is, you don't have much space from the end of the thimble to either the lock or the lock panels. And you've got to make this round. This wants to be round. And if you leave that wide, you see it doesn't leave you very much area to get it round. So this gives you a little more chance to make that round in there. And what we have is a hole, a threaded hole in the bottom side. And what we do is we put a 440 screw up from the bottom, and that hole there will bolt on. Now we don't have the bottom panel on here now, but that is going to hold it in place. The holes are already through between the barrels for all three thimbles. But right now we're going to be working on this lower thimble. This is probably what I consider the hardest job on the kit. And it's just a matter of taking your time, but everybody that has put them in has told me that that was the only part that they had any trouble with. So I'm going to take the time to show you how to do this right. Now, you take your pencil, and of course on the shape of the thimble, it has those little ridges right there. Now we're not going to be concerned with this part of the tang at all. We're just going to be concerned right now with the first part of this. And what I like to do, once it gets down there, I like to take and put a mark on the wood right opposite those rings. And that will help to line it up each time it goes in, and you can put it in without the screw being in and still know where it goes. Now, next thing we're going to do is keeping the lead part as plumb as we can. We're just going to run it up there. You see, I'm not being too careful. I'm letting it bump right across those bumps. Now this part here, it's right now it's up above, so we're not going to be worried about this lower part at all at this point. And then on the front edge, we're going to mark the front edge so we know where that is. Now we can take that out. Now the wood is very, very thin through here and through here, as I've already pointed out. What I do recommend, if you're building a hunting rifle, or if I'm building a finished rifle for somebody and they're going to use it for hunting, I actually glass bed these in, and it adds a tremendous amount of strength to them. I also, when I am doing the first shaping on the forestock here, I only run this this molding up right to the first edge of the thimble. Once the thimble is in, I'm going to continue these moldings and bring them up as far as the end of the straight part. So these will go up there. But if I don't leave all that extra wood there now, it's so thin that if you don't get a perfect fit and you press that in, it's liable to crack it. So I've left that a little heavier than it's going to be on the finished. And this piece here, you can see it is just very, very thin. Sometimes they will even break through on the front edge. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the very front edge. And you want a really sharp chisel for that, because it's so thin. And I'm just going to hold this and do it by hand. Just make a cut on each side there. Just drag that down. I'm just rocking that back and forth. I'm cutting it more like a knife cut. Once we get a nice clean cut down there, then we can go in here and just take a very, very tiny cut. Make sure that we've got that. Trying to keep out of the way of the camera. It's a little hard to do what I want to do and stay out of the way of the camera at the same time. A very delicate part here. In fact, I'm going to put my other glasses on. Now I've switched to this, what I call my Bivens knife, and that works very well in there for cutting that sharp edge without chipping it all away. But there is so little wood in there, you can't put as much pressure on it as you would like. I've got a nice clean line down there now. And now I should be able to shave that. And all we're going to take off there is just a little tiny sliver. It's like sharpening a pencil. Now it pays to take your time on this one, because this cut here will show. If I knew I was going to glass bed this, I wouldn't be as careful as I'm being here. And on this particular rifle, I will glass bed it just to show you how it's done. So I'm going to do it both ways. There, we got that little shelf in there for the front lip of that thimble. Now, the side edges, you see I can lay that in there, and as long as those rims line up with those pencil marks, I don't have to bother putting that screw back in. I'm just checking where my pencil line is. It looks good. So now I'm going to slide this panel off, and I'm going to cut back to that line, and I find the easiest way to do that is with a very small file. Well, actually, the easiest way is put it in the milling machine, which is what I would do, but I want to do this as a demonstration, so we won't use that milling machine right now. Now you can take this panel right out. It makes it a little bit easier to work on. So you can see where our pencil lines are there now. So I'm just going to take this very small file that wood is so thin there on that edge. It's easy to go too far. So you want to sneak up on it. Try that in there. So, it's a little better. A little off in this corner. Now when you're doing this, you've got to have a little patience. And again, you get that devil sitting on your shoulder saying, that's close enough. Give it a push. Give it a push, shove it in there, and you'll crack it. That's looking pretty good. Now, it's fitting down in there pretty good for the flats. What's touching now is the curve that's on here, and those little rims that go down in there. So I'm going to use this little rat tail file, a very, very fine rat tail file. And I'm going to file right on those lines where the rims are. Doesn't take very much. But it's just enough that if you don't give this a little bit of clearance, you'll put pressure on that wood. Remember, very thin here, so if you put that in, it presses out. You're very liable to crack here or crack down here. Now, if you're going to glass bed that, which we are going to do with this one, it's not as big a worry. Because if you color your glass bedding, the color of your stain, if you overcut just by a hair, I guarantee you'll never see it. In fact, the truth is it probably makes it a little bit stronger. Now, let's see if that fits there. Yeah, the front seems to be going in nicely. I think we have to take a little bit more off this back edge. I can still see the pencil line. So I'm going to take that down to the pencil line. And if you notice, I have a wooden dowel in here. Lily just asked me about that. And that's in there to give a little extra strength because it's not terribly strong. So if I put that dowel in there, it just presses down in there. It makes it a little sturdier. And when you put your clamp on up here, you're not so apt to break the edge of that loading stick groove. You can see the front has dropped right down in already. Now that it's going down there, we'll add a little bit more to our line just to get around the bump at the beginning. At the beginning of where this swells out here. Take just a little more with the file. And then these what you want is a gouge with that curve. Now you could do that. You could do that with a knife, the same knife that we cut some of the other moldings in, and bring, just follow those two cuts down there. I would rather do it with a gouge, and I have, for that, I like to use my palm chisels. And for this in particular, of course, it always has to be sharp, but it's got to be very, very sharp. And this is pretty close to the right curve, and I can just put that on there and press it and walk it in. Just don't have the strength in my hands to do it the way I used to, but these gouges are not made for hammering, but if you do it just gently, I guess it's okay. And that gives a start of that. All right, I've run the lines back here a little bit, but you don't go all the way back. You just go back a little at a time, because as that drops down in, it will actually get shorter as it goes in. So we just go that far at a time. You can see that line is only going, it's only gone that far right there. But we've got our plunge cut line there. Call it a plunge cut, even though I did it with the knife. And then you can use a chisel on this, or you can use a knife. I like the knife, but I'm not sure that I can do it with the power that I have left in my hands, and I can't. So we'll go to plan 2. Make sure we got a good sharp chisel. Actually, I think one of my palm chisels would work very well on that. There's no one way that, whatever works for you is what you want to do. But no matter what tool you choose, you want to make sure it's sharp. A little more leverage on this side. It's kind of a slow process here. Probably very boring to watch, but when you're doing it yourself, it's not so boring. I got that down enough. I'm going to drop that back down in again. Line up those pencil lines. Now I've not only got the pencil lines, I have that little tiny groove in for those rings. Now we can give ourselves a little bit more line. I still haven't gone all the way. I'm not dragging that knife with my hand, I'm pushing it with my thumb for a little better control. actually back that far, you could actually do a plunge cut with a chisel.
I'm going to put this right way down closer here.
Now you want to keep in mind about how thin it is through here. So when we're done, we're going to take very, very little off the top here, just enough to get the tail of that inlet, and that only has to be inlet halfway. The edge of that tank cut in here pretty good, but I know there's too much wood in here, so I'm going to use a round rasp, and then I have another one that is half round on both sides for the finish work. But I've got a fair amount of wood to take off there, so I'm going to use this one first. As long as I don't get up to that edge. And then where the round part is for on the thimble, you can take this light one and just give it a suggestion of a curve. Just so there won't be any pressure on that. Now I think it's time we'll put a little blackening on that, and that'll show us exactly where it's touching. Before I put that blackening on, I'm going to take it over to my grinder, and I'm going to take this sharp edge off the front here. It doesn't have to be there. And what I normally do also is I put a little bevel on the top of these wings, back about like that. So if and when we glass bed it in, it'll be easier to pull it out when they're on a bevel than it is when they're square. So you see, we've taken that bump off there. Pointless to leave that bump on there like that. It just gets in the way. And if we do glass bed it in, it's just something for that glass bed to stick onto. Now we'll put the blackening on. Okay, now it's a little more important to get this exactly in the right spot. So I want to put that screw back in the bottom there. This is where we get the black all over our fingers. Try as we may. Next thing to impossible to keep your fingers clean. Just need to get that in a couple of threads just so we know we're in the right spot. And we'll put that down there. Looks like it's fitting pretty good up front here. And again, you can give this a little bit of a tap, but again, watch out, that devil's telling you, go ahead, give it a whack. It'll go in, and it will. But it'll also crack something. Now we'll look down in there and see where she's touching. Got a little bit right here. A little bit right there. This is where that round part is on that thimble. So this works good because it has a little bit of a radius to it. And then there's touching right along there, but I'll take that off with that little file. Flat file. You see where it is right there. Doesn't take much to get it in there. You don't want to go too fast, so you gotta take your time and creep up on it. It's going in there pretty nicely. Well, eventually, when we get to the bottom there, the front is down about as almost where it's going to be for good. You want to go halfway on, almost halfway up on that side flat, on that side. But we got a nice tight fit there. I'm quite pleased with that. So we will finish our pencil line. All right. Now we could continue cutting that line with the knife, or we could do it with a gouge or a chisel. The only thing is, because it's so thin here, if we take and put a chisel on here and hit it with a hammer, it's so thin right through here that it's liable to break it. So I think the safest way to do that is to cut it with the knife. Now, if we break through in the center here, and we probably will, it's not a problem because the tab is going to be covering it. But we try not to. If we can do it without breaking through, as long as it doesn't break up onto the other side of the line, you're good.
This does not go in very deep.
On the other side, here, get this. So important to get the work right where you can work on it good. I could have cut that line from the other side, but I'd be a little off balance. So get on the other side of your bench and get a good hold on it. While I was doing that, I stopped and I put a little of that fast orange in my hands to get rid of that black. I hate having the black all over the place. Get the clamp on here again. Cut here, and you don't have to worry so much on the outer edge out here. It's just within this area right about there where the top of that hole is. But again, as I said, if you do break through, as long as it's not up in here, you're all right. The sides will hold the side of the thimble up. So I'm going to try doing this with my knife. when I'm doing these on my own here, and I'm not doing a video, when I cut this hole in here initially, run the end mill right down in, and then I run it up to about, all the way up to about there. And it makes it a little easier, but because that's going to end up coming out anyway because of the cutting of it to get it in deep enough. What you want to think about when you're doing this, I use this one because the black ink's not on it. When this goes over, this part is round, so it's got to go deeper in on the edges than it is in the middle.
I put some blackening on this pretty quick.
I'll put some blackening on. We've got that tab cut out pretty good. I think we're going to see a lot of black right in the center there. But I want to leave as much of that as I can, even though it isn't necessary. But if you can do that, it's good to do it. Kind of keep that black off my fingers, but that's next thing to impossible. I'm just going to wiggle that around a little bit. Get that black on there. Alright. Doesn't take much to hold it up. Right there is holding it up, and right here. You can see with the little rims, with these little rings here, are touching on the inside there. There's one on this side, and that one touched. So I'm just going to put this little round file on there. Just give it enough to clear it. Actually, I gotta take it off to do it. A little bit easier if I get it up on the side here. Doesn't seem like much, but that's just enough pressure there to cause it to crack.
Just a little bit touching right here.
I like these clamps with the rubber tips on them. They're less liable to chip your wood, and they're really, really strong. In fact, they're stronger than I like for my hands. By the end of the day, my hands are aching, but it's all part of it, I guess. Now we'll put the blacking, a little more blackening on this. Make sure we get that in the right place. Very nice. It's going all the way down there now. I'm just going to give that a little light tap, get the blackening on there where I want it. You can see what a nice fit we've got there now. Those little ridges are in there. And you take this lower thimble out and you look at that, and it looks rather crude because of that hole being right to the bottom. But it's got to go to the bottom in order for this loading stick to be deep enough to go all the way in. Okay, we've just got a couple more spots there that are still showing the black right there. I'm going to take that little light file. You can see right there where it's touching. I want that little round file. If this wasn't so narrow through here, that was a good solid piece of wood. I'd put that thimble on there and I'd give it a wrap with the mallet and drive it in there good and tight. But in this case, we can't do that because that wood is so delicate there. So put that back. Eventually, we're going to have to bend the tab a little bit, but I want to get it as close as I can before I do that. We'll put that in there. Take this down out here to see how close we are there. Yep, it's got to go down a little bit there. What's holding it up now is this tab is touching on the barrels. So I'm going to take it over to the grinder and then I'm going to take that down. I'll grind about maybe 20-25 thousandths off of it, as long as I leave enough for the thread to go through. The wall in this inside the thimble itself is 50 thousandths, and that's at least another 50, so I can afford to take 20 thousandths off of that. Good way to hold this is slide a dowel that's just a little bit too big, taper it, and then you can hold it and work on it very good. I've ground that down a little bit so that this will go deeper, and that actually touches on the bottom of the barrels. Let me just get this set of barrels here. I can show you on this. This is a 40 and a 54, but when that goes in, that actually touches in the bottom of that groove like that. So I've made a little bevel on the edges, even on the, and beveled it right up to the hole. I don't know if you can see that shine on there or not. So that gives it just a little bit more depth. But the fact that it does touch on the barrel, that also gives it quite a bit of strength to it. This time I'm going to put the screw up through it, make sure we're in the right spot. I think we're ready to do a little bending. What I'm going to do is bend this tab down a little bit so that it will hit a little sooner on the point end of it. All right, here I'm just going to slide that in the top of the aluminum vise, and I'm just going to bend it with my thumb. If I overbend it a little bit, I can straighten it out when it's actually on the gun. Before I bent that tab down, I can see that it was touching here, so I am going to take some of that off. I'm trying to keep from breaking through on that, but a little more crafty if you can do it without breaking through. And if you end up glass bedding it in, it's a nice shelf for the glass bedding to lay on that little shelf. There we are. Fitting in there very nicely. You can see it's touching down on the end. And we've got it overbent just a little bit. And I want to see if that hole is take a little bit more off on that end. File and taking all the high little bumps off of here. So I can get that tab to go down a little bit deeper. And it smooths it up nice so that nobody's ever going to see in here, but just knowing that it's smoother. You could also do this with a scraper. Now, we'll try that. I'm going to give it one more blackening. I did overbend that when I bent the tab down a little bit, so I just bent it back just a little bit. Put that in there. And looks like it's going down there. Pretty good. We got the edge all the way under. The entrance there seems to be down. Now we'll slide a loading stick in there and see if it'll go in. I have to taper the loading sticks, but most loading sticks are tapered, even in a conventional single barrel gun. Okay, you can see how I've tapered the stick. Seems like the back edge is touching there on something. But you know, if I take this out, you'll see here how far that has to go down. So we've got to get the thimble down a little deeper so that will clear and go up all the way up into here. and we don't have much thickness there. So I think we'll measure it and see exactly what we do have on that. You can see that's touching the barrel in there. Yeah, that 75 or 80 thousandths. Yeah. Right there, we get 50 thousandths. Well, the only way we can get that down any deeper would be to take a little bit more off of that stud there, because it is touching on the barrel now. Let me just take another couple of thousand. Oh, all right, now we've got the thimble all inlet. There's enough clearance, and it's good and tight without being too tight. And the loading stick, as you can see, goes all the way in. Now, we want the stick to be able to go in with the thimble in. We can't get the thimble in any deeper. It is right up against the barrel now. So that's going to have to be deeper now. See if our rod will go in. It does, but it's catching on the back side. It's scraping there. So what I'll do is I'll put this little round file in, hold this down tight, and I believe it's the back part of the thimble that's giving it the problem. That's it. She goes all the way in. Now, you see the loading stick, it is not as long as the barrel. With the powder charge in there, the loaded stick will be just long enough to go in. But there's no way we can get it any deeper, because it'll only go as far as where this screw goes through the barrel. So we might be able to get it in there ½ an inch deeper by working on the inside, and you can do that if it bothers you about the stick not being long enough. So we've got that done. Now I think what we're going to do is to, you can see how nice that fits. Even the rings on the thimble are cut in. Nice, neat job. And even if you epoxy, you really want a good snug fit there. If you make a mistake and it's a little wider than the thimble itself, and you glass bed it in, the glass bedding is going to fill it, and you'll never see it. Now, if it's a rifle that you're building for a collector, that's a different thing. Then I would not epoxy it in and work with it just the way it is and finish it up just the way. But for this one, I'm going to show you how to epoxy that in. Now we're going to proceed to glass bed that lower thimble in, which will give it a lot of strength, and then I'll show you how to finish that up. So what we have to do, we want to be able to get the thimble out and get the side panel off. So what we want to do is wax anything we don't want the epoxy to stick to. And of course we don't want it to stick to the barrel or the thimble. So I'm going to heat this barrel now, and I'm just going to heat it enough that the wax will flow on there. You only have to heat it in the area where the epoxy is going to be. Remember, don't overheat them. These barrels are soft-sided together. After I put the wax on, I just run that over to smooth it out. And we'll wax the screw. All we're going to do with that is just to rub it into the threads like that. We'll let that cool. Mix up our fiberglass to bed that lower thimble, and this is what I use. I buy this at the automotive store. This is the fiberglass resin with the hardener. It's very, very easy to use, and it's if you use it just as a clear film, it's not all that strong, but if you add some fiberglass to it, it becomes very strong. You can make a little sheet of it, and you can't even break it with your fingers. But this is regular fiberglass matting, and I just take this and I shave the edge of it. It doesn't take a lot of the resin itself to do it. I always seem to mix up more than I need, but I'd rather have a little more than I need than to run short. And that was more than I need. Now this is the hardener, but before you put the hardener in, you want to put your color in. And I use the color that I buy at the automotive store. I just go to a good, not an automotive store, but a paint supply store, and or an art store, and you can buy the raw color. Bring little jars with you, and just have them put an ounce of color in 2 or 3 different jars for you. And when you get them home, you can mix them together to make different colors if you're trying to match up a certain stain. Now I know the stain I'm going to use, which is going to be the dark walnut, and I've already mixed up some Van Dyke brown and a little bit of lamp black in here to get the color that I need. Now I just take a popsicle stick, and it doesn't take much of this raw color to make your color. It's just on the end of that stick. I put the color in first, and if anything, I would rather have it too dark than too light. None of this is going to show on the rifle when it's put together, but you like to get it as close as you can. All right. Now I've got about a half an ounce in there. So I've done this so many times, I can pretty much guess what I need for hardener. I'm going to put 10 drops in there. So 2 more for good measure. If you put too much in, it'll go too quick on you and you won't have time to work. You want to mix that really, really well. Once the hardener is in it, I like to put just a little bit in another container before I put the fiberglass cloth into it. Just in case there's this place where I want to pour a little of the straight epoxy in itself. That should be enough. Take this little jar here I've used before. I'm just going to pour just a little bit of that in there. And we'll just keep that aside. We may or may not use that. And I'm just going to take this and put it in there. I don't really measure it. I just done it so many times, I pretty much know. Just a little pinch, and you can see the strands in there. And I'll make a little bar of that and show you how strong that is with what we have left over. Now, should let that set for about a minute before you do anything with it. Now we'll check back here. See, this is cooled down enough that I can touch it. Here's our panel that's going on. Now I used to stain the outside here before I did this, but once it's done, the epoxy is going to ooze out and seep on top here and down over the barrel and everything. But we cut that off and we'll resand this, and there won't be any stain or anything left. So I was just wasting my time to do that. So I'm not going to bother putting the stain on it. And actually, I think I am on this one. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to stain the rod channel itself. Because a little bit of the epoxy is going to run it up there and nobody's going to see it, but I think I would just as soon have it that way. So we'll get a little stain. It won't take a minute to stain it. Now you can do this with a Q-tip. That's all you need. A muzzle, a little stain in there at the same time. Got to keep in mind we got stain epoxy cooking over there. So I'll put the hairdryer on that. This is just a birchwood Casey dark walnut stain, and it's an alcohol stain, so it dries. The alcohol evaporates very quickly. All right. Now we're going to put our fiberglass on there. And you really only have to go a couple of inches either side of the, is the hole in the barrel that holds the thimble in where the screw goes through. You can see the cloth right in there. I don't know if that screw will stay up by itself or not, but I'll try it.
Do you want me to hold it?
No, I'll put it in when I get ready to put the thimble in. And I'm just going to put a little bit on the barrel itself. This will all squeeze out onto the barrel anyway, but I just like to be sure. That cloth that's in there is what really, really gets rugged. That should be enough. Now I'll put this in here to keep it off my bench. Get my screw. Now I'll put this in. Looks like I could have used a little bit more in there, and I'm going to put a little more in. Get some of that cloth to go in there. Don't worry if it runs out into your rod channel. Get it on the sides here. And when that tab goes off your thimble, you want to try to get a little of that cloth in there. Again, don't worry about getting it on the wood, because we're going to sand it all off after we take it out. You only have so much time to work with this stuff. All right. I've got my screw. I'm going to put that up through between the barrels. Make sure that this is in place.
Here's one.
Yep. Put that right on there, Lily. So, there. Here we are. Can't hold that screw with my finger. this clamp. Want to make sure that that is all the way in place. It appears it has to go forward a little bit. That looks better. Put my scribe down here, make sure that now we want to give this a good squeeze. Just down here closer so we can get a grip on it without hurting the molding. Squeeze that down good and tight. Here we are. Now it's just a matter of waiting probably 15 to 20 minutes, and we will, by that time, that epoxy will have turned to a rubbery consistency. But while we're waiting for that, I'm going to make a little piece of here so I can show you what it looks like when, how strong it is. We'll just leave that there to harden, and then when it hardens up, we'll do a little test on it to see how hard it is. Now we've waited about 15 to 20 minutes, and this epoxy should be set up enough that we can cut the excess off. We want to do that when it's quite rubbery, and probably the most important thing is to take that screw out from the bottom, the very first thing. To get a little stubby screwdriver for that. Now, after the screw is out, we'll have to run a drill bit into the hole, being very careful not to get into the threads in the piece of brass, but that'll just go in there to clean out the epoxy that's in the hole. Otherwise, it'll be very hard to get this the side panel off. Let me just test this over here. I think we can get rid of that You come over this side, Lou. You can see the excess on here, so I'll just run the edge of my knife down there like that, and this should come right off. You be careful not to do this too hard with your knife because it will actually cut into the barrel. I'll go on the other side and do the other side. I don't like to take these other clamps off too quick. Guess I'll have to take that clamp off. That would all come off when I pull that panel off anyway, but it's that much less we have to fight with. I think that's set up pretty good. Now, take that clamp off. And I'm just going to take this and cut right up against that. Well, that's set up pretty hard. But if you don't get it, break that joint, it'll be hard to get that thimble out. And we want to be able to remove that thimble. Come over that side, Lo. Actually, we could have done that a little sooner, but actually, I think I'll, yeah, that came. the only other thing I'm going to do before we let that set up for a bit is I'm going to run the drill into the hole where the long screw was. While that is still soft, it's a lot easier to feel it going in. In fact, if I'd have done it a little sooner, could have done it with my fingers. And I think I got it all out. Okay. All right, we've got the lower thimble all set in there and all glass bedded in. We're going to let that set and get good and hard before we try to remove the side panel off the barrels or to take the thimble out of the wood itself. The harder that epoxy gets, the easier it comes out. It gets a little more brittle. While we're waiting for that, we're going to go ahead and put in our regular front thimbles, the one for the very end, and this thimble, which I call number 2 thimble. Now, what I do is I smooth the bottoms out before I put them in. I don't get too carried away. I don't clean the thimbles till after I get them all in and set. And the very last thing I do, clean them and polish them. So right now, what we've got is the thimble ready to put in, and we've got the cut, the pre-cut in the ramrod groove now, and this is going to fit right in. All we have to do is to clean the 2 ends. The middle section should be fine. It's just on the very 2 ends that we're going to have to clean up. Now we're going to, just as we did with the lower thimble, we're going to put the screw up through the bottom, bring it up, and we're going to put it into the hole where that'll hold it into the wood. Now there's a front and the back because these holes are not exactly in the dead center of the thimble. So what you want to do is to mark the front of your thimble. Now this being the second thimble, I put 2 grooves on that. When you put this in, you always want to put it the numbers are on the front forward. So we'll put that screw up in and bring this up tight. Now what happens if you don't do that, if you turn it this way and put it in, they may not make up a match on the ends. So you always want to have it in there in the same direction that you originally placed it in. And then what we do, we take our pencil and we mark both ends, and I remark the edge where the 2 rings are and the curved edge on this part of the thimble, just so I have it printed on the top of the stock. Then we can take this off, and all we have to do is to work on this little part right here, and we're going to do that. This is easier than the one that we did down here because we have a lot more wood to work with. And we're going to put a dowel in. We'll put a dowel in here and clamp to it so that'll be held nice and tight. And we'll get a good sharp chisel, and this one should work nicely. And we want to, if I can stay away from the camera here, we want to go in here and cut the edge where the front will go. try doing that with my knife. Might work a little bit better. But I've got to be very careful not to break the top of that off. Now we will be sanding off. I'm going to sand the top of this down after we get the thimbles all set. We're going to sand it down at least to the center of the flat, the side flat on the thimble. A little bit of a trick here doing this with the camera in the way. But we'll see. I just make a cut on the bottom there. Now I'm going to have to raise that up so that I can get in here and work. There's no point in being there, having the camera unless I can work. So we'll continue cutting this front edge a little narrower. And get to the bottom here, if you just put a narrower chisel in there and just rock it back and forth right on the line. That should be deep enough. And now just come down and just, it's almost scraping it away rather than cutting. And there's very, very little to take out there. It's just the very front lip. It's taking me more time to set up the camera so I can work it than it is actually do this job. Now we got it working. Now we got a nice square edge up front. Now we'll do the back. And this. On these two thimbles, you could actually use the mallet to tap that in. That's working all right. Now I got the line cut around it. I just slice down and this is like a pencil sharpening cut. Cut's not quite deep enough. Alright, now we'll try the thimble. Remember, we must get the number on it up towards the front. I'll put the screw up through the bottom. Just get it started so we know it's right. Now I'm going to remark this, make sure it's right. I'm pretty sure it is. I think what's touching now on the bottom is the block itself. So we'll just blacken that up and put it in again. Numbers to the front. Now we put it down there. A little. That should show us where that block is hitting. Oh, not quite going deep enough. Try it without that. There it is. Now we can see it. So now we can take and cut that out. We'll use this very narrow chisel. That light has quite a ring to it.